All right, good afternoon, grade sevens. I hope that you guys are all having a relatively decent week so far and that you guys have been productive um, as well. Guys, we're going to get started with our lesson pretty soon now. We're just wanting to give everybody an opportunity to join us. So, just very quickly, guys, I want to give you a heads up as to what we're going to be discussing in today's lesson. So last week, grade sevens, we were busy talking about the coordinate plane, right? And we want to dive into this in a little bit more detail today. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you guys now already. But like I said, I do want to just give everybody an opportunity to join us. All right. So please just make sure that while you're waiting now for the next 2 or 3 minutes, that you have got everything that you need, which includes all of your stationery and so on and so forth. Because once we get started, guys, we're going to keep up with our pace. All right. Good afternoon to all of you that have joined so far, guys. Um, please make sure that if you have any questions, if there's anything that you want to ask me, you ask now at the beginning of the lesson. Sorry, guys, I just need to quickly change this. Right. So on your screen now, you should be able to see my screen as well. And I'm going to be scribbling in a few different colored pens. You should be able to see white, yellow, orange, green, and blue. If at any point during today's lesson you cannot see what I'm writing anymore, or you cannot hear what I am saying, you need to please let me know by typing a message into the comment box for me. All right. So, guys, today's date is the 21st of May 2025. This is the 18th lesson of the year. So we have already managed to get through quite a lot this year. Okay, please keep in mind that you have access to all of the recordings. I will remind you guys towards the end of the lesson as well. All right. I'm going to give everyone just 1 or 2 more minutes and then we're going to get going with today's work. I want to remind you guys of what we were speaking about in last week's lesson, just as a little bit of revision before we get started with today's work. Okay, so let's quickly do a little bit of revision. Our heading for today is going to be using the coordinate plane. Using the coordinate plane. For those of you that were here last week, you might also remember that the coordinate plane has got a different name. Sometimes it is referred to as the Cartesian plane. Okay, you guys are going to be using this a lot next year in grade 8. And if you keep up with Maths Core or Maths Pure, you guys will be using this until the end of high school. All right, so let's quickly go through some of the basics again, grade sevens. I'm not going to spend too much time doing this, but I am going to give you guys 2 or 3 minutes later on in the lesson to draw out a Cartesian plane like this, right? I've just changed my screen for a second, and you can see here that we have a grid of the coordinate plane essentially. And we're going to use this to practice our work today. So I will get you guys to copy that down just now. But for now, let's quickly revise the important information that we need to discuss. So first things first. Number one, the coordinate plane is made up of two axes. right? Two axes refers to essentially two number lines. The horizontal axis is called the x-axis. Okay, you need to remember this. Your teacher does not have to point this out in your test or exam. The horizontal axis is called the x-axis, while the vertical axis, sorry guys, just give me a second. Right, the vertical axis is called the y-axis. Okay, we're going to go and look at this now in a second. I'll give you guys an opportunity to just watch me break down the coordinate plane into a few small details. Number four, what else do we need to know about using the coordinate plane? Exact locations can be communicated using coordinates. Please remember, guys, that I can't go through everything again in as much detail as I went through last week. If you need to go back and watch that lesson because maybe you're new or you just weren't able to attend, let me know so that I can help you to find the recording. Okay, exact locations can be communicated using coordinates. Very important concept, guys. And I'm going to talk through all of this in a second. Let's just write a few notes down. Coordinates are always written in the form x semicolon then y. Okay, this is extremely important here, guys. Please make sure that you copy this down. X then y. Okay. So these are some of the fundamentals that we really need to understand when it comes to working on the coordinate plane. Now, I will quickly remind you guys, when we look at these coordinate planes, there is quite a lot of detail that we can derive from it. Okay, whenever we draw our axes, we use arrows on the end of the lines to represent that these lines continue until infinity. Okay, they never end. We know that our horizontal line is the x axis and our vertical line is the y axis. Right? Now, what we discussed in last week's video or sorry, last week's lesson was quite important. We split the coordinate plane up into four pieces, which we call quadrants. The top right-hand side is quadrant one, the top left is quadrant two, and then we continue working our way around in an anti-clockwise fashion to find quadrant three and quadrant four. Now you might be wondering, why is the order so confusing? And that's something you guys will discuss at a later stage. Okay. It's a little bit too much information to talk about now, but we need to know this basic information about the coordinate plane. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to quickly copy. If you guys have any questions, now would be a great time to ask. Please remember that you just have to type a message into the comment box, and as soon as I see it, I will answer it. Okay, please don't be afraid to ask, guys. I'm here to help. Okay, so guys, this idea of a coordinate plane, while you guys are just copying, is really, really, really important. And while for now we are looking at this coordinate plane almost like a grid, right? Where we try and describe specific locations using coordinates, the idea of this coordinate plane gets used in a few other really important topics. And this is actually the foundation of some of the most incredible sections in maths. So, you guys have got 1 minute to quickly finish copying, and then I'm going to ask you guys to draw an example of a grid if you want to copy. Otherwise, you guys can watch me for now and then copy from the recording once the lesson is over. It's up to you guys. It depends on how quickly you're able to draw and copy information. So you may make that call on your own. All right. But what we're going to go and do now is basically discuss how do we accurately define where we are on this coordinate plane, right? If I were to take a dot, a yellow dot, and put it right over here, how do I describe exactly where that dot is? While I could say, yes, that dot is in quadrant one, that's not really specific enough, right? That's like saying, I live in Johannesburg, but I want somebody to deliver me a package, right? Without knowing exactly where I live, it's very difficult to reach the final location. So it's going to be hard for us to describe where this yellow dot is if we don't add a little bit more information to our description, right? So what we're going to do now is move over to the next slide. And I want to just explain the grid. If you guys would like to copy an example down, you are more than welcome to, but it is completely up to you. Okay. This is an example of the coordinate plane, grade six, grade sevens. Sorry, guys. Uh, Right. So when we look at this, the first thing that I want you to notice is that running from left to right, we have our x axis. This yellow line, this axis running from left to right, represents the x axis. And the same thing is true of the vertical axis. It also has its own name, right? The line running from top to bottom over here is our y-axis, right? So we have these two different number lines that meet together and it forms the coordinate plane. Now, please put your pens down for a second and watch what I am about to describe. Then you can go ahead and copy this down before we move on to some examples. Please, please, please just watch for a second. Right. Um, Guys, I want to quickly change. Sorry, guys. Hmm. Okay, it's not giving me an option to change. Okay, it doesn't matter. Right. So looking at this grid, guys, what's the first thing that we notice? Well, we've got our x-axis moving from left to right over here. Now, the center of our coordinate plane is right in the middle here where our two axes overlap. As we move to the right and we count up, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. But if we move to the left, we start counting down to our negative numbers, right? Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and so on and so forth as we progress further to the left. Now, if we look at the vertical y-axis running up and down, the same thing is true. Where the two lines meet in the middle is considered 0. And as we count up, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. But as we count down, we move into the negatives. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and so on and so forth. Right? So if you guys would like to quickly copy this, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do so. All right? Then I am going to start. So if you guys want to copy, use this time now to quickly do so. Otherwise, I'm going to move ahead. Right, what I'm also going to do is place a few dots around the screen. So we're going to have a yellow dot over here, right on the right-hand side. I'm going to place an orange dot up here to the top left-hand corner. I'm going to place a green dot, let's say over here in the bottom left-hand quadrant, quadrant number 3. And finally, I'll do a blue dot over here in quadrant 4. If you guys would like to copy these down, you can. Okay, you've got 2 minutes to quickly do so. And what we are going to start doing, grade 7s, is finding the exact coordinates for these dots. Okay, so remember, whenever we decide to discuss the coordinates of a specific dot, it's important to remember that coordinates are always written in the form x, then y. Always, no matter what. Okay? So let's go ahead and discuss the first coordinate, or the coordinate of the first dot, which is over here, our yellow dot in quadrant 1. How would I find the coordinates of this dot over here, grade 7? Well, if I know that a coordinate always needs to be written in the form x then y, I'm going to try and find the x value first. Where does my x value come from? Well, I've highlighted in yellow because our x value comes from our x-axis over here, the horizontal line, right? So what we're going to do is take our ruler and line our dot up with the x-axis, right? And when I do this, I can see that my value, my x value is positive 7. So we're going to write our brackets first for the coordinates. We open our brackets and we know that our x value needs to be the value positive 7. So we'll write that down and then put in our semicolon. The second part of a coordinate is the y value. Where do we find y values? On the y-axis, right? So now I'm going to draw a dotted line so that I can line my dot up with the y-axis. and I'm doing this in orange on purpose, or let's actually rather do it in yellow. Sorry, guys. Right, I line up with the y-axis, and you can see that when I look at the level that my yellow dot is sitting at, I'm at a height of positive 3. So we can see our x value is 7 and our y value is positive 3. So we're going to go ahead and write down the 3 into brackets over there. And there you have it, grade 7s. The coordinates of the yellow dot is the point 7, 3, where 7 represents the x value and y represents, 3 represents the y value. So let's go ahead and apply this exact same style of thinking to our orange dots at the top left of the screen. If I want to find the coordinates of this pointer here, how am I going to go about doing that? Well, we know coordinates always appear in the form xy, so I need my x value first. I find my x value on the x-axis. So I'm going to draw a dotted line using my ruler all the way down to my x-axis, and I can see that my orange dot lines up with the value -4, right? -4. So when I open my brackets to write down the coordinates for this point, we are going to have an open bracket and a -4 in the first spot, which represents the x value. Then to find the y value, I need to line my dot up with the y-axis. Grade 7. Right? We know that the y-axis is this orange vertical number line. So I then connect it to the y-axis. And I can see that my dot sits at a height of positive 8. Positive 8. So we can go ahead and finish this coordinate by writing an 8 into the second slot of our coordinate and close our brackets. I know that this might not seem like a big deal to you guys for now, grade 7s, but please make sure that you are using round brackets and you are not using square brackets. You'll learn next year in grade 8 that these different brackets have very different meanings. Okay. So when it comes to coordinates, we always just use round brackets no matter what. Okay, so there we go, guys. We have the coordinates of the second orange dot, which is -4, +8. So let's move on to coordinate number 3, which is going to be our green coordinate here at the bottom of the screen. Right. I know that my coordinates are always written in the form x, then y. So to find the coordinates of this green dot, in other words, to find the exact location of my green dot, I need to start by finding the x value. The x value is always going to be found along the x-axis, which we know is the horizontal yellow line. So I'm going to draw a dotted line all the way up to my x-axis, and you guys can see that we reach the point -7, right? We are aligned with -7 as our x. So when I open my brackets to write down my coordinates, I start with -7 in the first space. I then write down my semicolon. After finding my x value, I need to find my y value. How do I do that? By lining my dot up with the y axis. So again, use your ruler, and guys, there's no harm in drawing on your test page or in your textbook. It's generally very helpful, actually. So we can see over here that our green dot lines up with the value -4 on the y-axis. So -4 would be classified as the y value, right? So now we write -4 into brackets. And this is where so many students start getting really nervous, grade sevens, because they see a coordinate now and both of the values in my coordinates are negative, right? And although that might look really, really weird, it's actually completely normal. Okay. We have positive and negative numbers for a reason. And this is why it was so important for us to discuss how integers work. Remember, integers, which have a symbol of Z, are all the positive and negative whole numbers. So we learned how to add and subtract negative numbers. We learned how to multiply and divide negative numbers. And that's because this is going to play a huge role in this section that we are starting to prepare for. Okay. Guys, if we have any questions, please make sure that you type it into the comment box for me. Right. Guys, somebody has mentioned that they cannot hear me as clearly as they wish they could. I don't know if this is a problem that many of you are having. If it is, please let me know. I've tried to correct the issue as much as I can. I'm sorry I was a little slow to seeing that comment, but hopefully it's a little bit better now. Okay. Let's go ahead and find the coordinates of our final dot over here. This is the blue dot on the far right-hand side. Remember, coordinates are always written in the form x, then y. So, in order to find the x value of this coordinate, I need to line it up with the x-axis, which is actually very close by. Right, we can see that we line up with the value positive 11 on our horizontal x-axis. So the first part of our coordinate needs to be positive 11. Next, we need to find the y value. How do we do that? We need to line up our dot with the y-axis, which I'm busy doing now. When we do this, we can see that our dot lines up with the value -2 on the y-axis. So when we try and write the coordinate for this point, we can see that our x value over here, according to our x-axis, is positive 11. So you can just write the number 11 as is, followed by a semicolon. Our y value is -2 over here, right? So we are going to write the value -2, making sure that we are very careful to include the negative symbol. All right. All right. We're going to add on a few extra pieces of information, guys, before we are done. Right, so I'm going to give you guys a second to copy, so please do so now. While those of you that have finished copying are waiting, please remember the top right hand corner is quadrant 1, which we can label as Q1. On the right hand, oh, sorry, to the left of that, we have quadrant 2, and we continue moving clockwise, anti-clockwise. Quadrant 3 is the bottom left, and at the bottom right, we have quadrant number 4. So if you guys are asked to identify the quadrant in which a specific dot is sitting, you need to be able to um, explain which quadrant is 1, 2, 3, and 4. I hope that this is making some sense to you, grade 7s. Right. Somebody said that the coordinate for the blue dot is 11, -2. You were absolutely correct. Now, there are one or two smaller exceptions that we still need to discuss, grade 7. So we're going to talk about that now. Okay, I'm going to find two more colors. If you guys don't have any more colors, it's okay. Please don't stress about it too much. Right. So we're going to add another dot. Now I've used highlighter on these axes already, guys, to remind you that the yellow line is the x-axis, the orange vertical line is the y-axis. But please pay close attention to where I place the next two dots. I'm going to try and make them as obvious as I can. Right, let's say we have a dot over here to the left in a bright blue over here. And we have one last dot on the y-axis right over here. We're going to quickly talk about the coordinates of these two dots because they're actually a little bit more confusing. And then I'm going to add one last dot right in the center over here. Let's quickly talk about the coordinates of these dots, guys. Now, I want you to think about something very quickly. Let's say I'm sitting on this yellow line over here, and you can think of the yellow line as ground level, right? We can then think of the y-axis as an elevator. We go up to floor number 1, floor number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and so on. Or we can go down into the basements, right? -1 is the first garage underground, then -2, -3, and so on and so forth. If I look at my bright blue dot over here on the far left-hand side, how would I find the coordinates of this dot, grade 7s? First, whenever we are looking at a coordinate, we need to remember that we are working in the format x, then y. I know this is repetitive, but it's like that on purpose. What is the x value for this bright blue dot? Where am I sitting on this x axis? Well, I can see that I'm all the way over here across at -10. So when I start writing my coordinates, I'm going to have -10 as the x value, but then I still need to identify the y value. What height am I sitting at according to my orange line? My y-axis, grade 7s. Am I on the ground floor? Am I on the first floor? Am I in the third basement? If I am sitting on this x-axis, it means that I am perfectly in line with ground level, right? In other words, I'm perfectly aligned with 0 on the y-axis. I'm not up on the positive numbers yet, and I'm not at the negative numbers yet either. I'm right in the middle at 0. So the coordinate for this bright blue dot is -10, 0. And a lot of students get really nervous about that because they see a 0 in the coordinates and they think that that means that they've done something wrong. That's not true, guys. You have not done anything wrong. But you do need to pay attention to what your x value is and what your y value is. Let me prove to you why that's the case. Let's take a look at this bright pink dot that we have at the top left, at the top of the screen where my arrow is pointing. If we're trying to find the coordinates of this point over here, remember, we are looking for coordinates in the form x, then y. So, what is my x value for this pink dot over here? What number do I line up with on my x-axis running from left to right? Well, I can see that I actually line up with 0, right? I haven't moved over to the positive numbers yet on the right, and I haven't moved over to the negative numbers on the left just yet. I'm still perfectly in line with 0. So my x value in this case is 0. And what is my y value? What do I line up with on my vertical y-axis? I can see that I'm sitting exactly on the point +6. So my coordinate for the pink dot is going to be 0, +6. Okay. So, guys, I want you to remember, yes, we can have points pretty much anywhere on this grid. But what a lot of people don't realize is that this also includes on the axis, on the X or Y axis itself, right? Somebody gave this coordinate over here for our pink dot a very good shot, and they said that it was 6, 0, right? Unfortunately, guys, 6, 0 and 0, 6 are not the same thing, right? The correct coordinate is 0, 6. If I was looking for 6, 0, I would actually be looking at this point right over here on my x-axis, right? So the order of your values has a huge impact. All right. So just be very careful. 60 and 06 are not the same, but great job for trying. You've got the right idea. Okay, keep it up. So I hope this has made a little bit of sense to you guys, grade sevens. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to quickly finish copying. Now, if you have any questions at this point, you need to please ask. I'm going to add one last detail onto this diagram for us. And I spoke about it briefly in last week's lesson. The white dot sitting right in the center over here is known as the origin, right? What does the word origin mean, grade sevens? Origin means where something started, right? And this is where the x and y axes both started. It's the middle. And this right point that we have right in the middle has the coordinate 0, 0. Why is that the case? Because it is 0 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. It's the starting point for both of those lines. Okay. I know this is quite a lot of detail, guys, but I hope that it uh, has made some sense to you all. So please make sure you copy this down very quickly. Now, when we were talking about the first 4 points that we did, we spoke about the yellow, orange, green, and blue points. Each of these dots are sitting in their own coordinates. We can see that our yellow dot is sitting in quadrant 1. We can see that our orange dot is sitting in quadrant 2, the green in quadrant 3, and the blue in quadrant 4. Now, when it comes to talking about the bright blue dot over here and the bright pink dot towards the top of the screen, it's important to remember that these don't fall into one specific quadrant. Instead, we just say that they are sitting on the axes. Okay, right, guys. So that is pretty much what we've needed to discuss in today's lesson, and I hope that it does make some sense to you guys. I know that it's not the lesson that we've done the most writing in, and we'll definitely get back to having more lessons where we do a lot of writing. But this is sort of a very visual section within the math syllabus, right? And if you guys are quite artsy people or you like seeing things as pictures as opposed to numbers all the time, you've got a good chance at actually really enjoying this section of work. Okay. And those of you that are very number oriented and very focused on values and very, how can I explain it? Very bland work in the sense that we don't have a lot of color and pictures, right? It's very straightforward. This is also a very it's one of the sections that requires a lot of attention to detail. So it's quite a cool topic in the sense that it caters to a lot of different people. All right. Guys, this is all that we are going to write down in today's lesson. So I'm going to give you 1 or 2 more minutes to finish copying very quickly. And then I want to show you the quizzes that we can try to test our understanding of this work. Okay. Before we move on to the quiz, while you guys are just finishing copying your work, there is a little bit more that we're going to need to discuss maybe in our next lesson next week. What is that? Well, let's just quickly say, for example, I put a dot over here. I called this dot A, and I put another dot over here called dot B. We can reach the point that instead of just having dots on this coordinate plane, we can put full lines, right? And at this point, we can start asking ourselves, what is the length of this line, right? How do we measure distance on this coordinate plane? And that's something that also becomes quite important. So if you guys are wondering where this topic moves, uh, where it moves as we make our way further into the section of work, we're going to start looking at the lengths of different lines. They can be both horizontal lines like line AB, but we could also be looking at vertical lines like AC, right? And when we move into high school next year, you guys are going to learn how to work with slanted lines, right? Like this line over here. This is where you are heading if you continue with maths the way that you are now. So this is going to be lots of fun, and there's still a lot for us to learn about this topic. But I don't want to completely overwhelm you guys with this section of work. So I hope that what I've explained already makes sense to you. Okay. For those of you that have ever walked into high school classes or seen your older brothers or sisters work, or maybe just an older friend, we start drawing all kinds of different graphs on these coordinate planes. Okay, and that's where things get really exciting. Guys, you've got a few more seconds and then I'm going to change screens. And if you need to go back to this so that you can finish copying, please remember to type a message into the comment box. Okay, quickly wrap up your copying, please. You've got a few more seconds. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at iRainbow very quickly. You are going to see that screen disappear and I'm going to pop up. Please don't let that bother you. I am the one changing the screen. Okay. So, grade sevens, when we want to take some time, whether that's later this evening or later on in the week, maybe even over the weekend, when we want to practice this section, we're going to need to be able to find it on iRainbow. So I want to quickly show you guys that. Right. I'm going to start by opening iRainbow and I'll be greeted by the screen in front of me. Please remember to keep your softwares up to date. I'm going to move over down here to the island of measurement, right? And click on that. Then the second topic that pops up is called measurement coordinates. Find your way. So we want to click on this, and you can see this looks like our coordinate plane too. So we're going to click on the yellow icon, and then there are 4 different quizzes that we can try. Now, as far as this last quiz at the bottom right is concerned, we have not yet spoken about how to calculate distances on a graph on this coordinate plane, right? I showed you guys that we will talk about that soon enough, but that is not what you need to practice for right now. Instead, I want you guys to focus on the first quiz, coordinate planes, the second quiz, graph axes and quadrants. And if you want to just explore a little bit, you're more than welcome to go and try the quiz called Find Your Way on a Graph. Okay, let's start at the top left with coordinate planes. We're going to pick on level. Please make sure that you try and complete level one first before you move on to level two. Question one, just as an example, guys, asks you, what are the coordinates of point J? When I enlarge the image, we can see that point J is the bright pink dot over here at the bottom right in quadrant 4. If we want to find its coordinates, we need to find the x value first and the y value second, right? To find the x value, we line up with the x axis, and we can see that we line up with positive 3 on the x axis. So we can fill that into the first part of the coordinate. What is the y value of point J? Well, we need to line up with the y axis. Okay, we can see when we do that, we line up with negative 2. Right, so we're going to go and type that into the second part of the coordinates and press submit. And you can see that our method for finding the coordinates of a point is more than accurate. Okay, if I try one last example with you guys, what are the coordinates of point B for Bravo? We can see that point B is the bright red dot at the top left in quadrant 2. If we want the coordinates of the point, we need to find the x and y values. We can see that the x value, according to this diagram, is negative 1. And the y value, according to our y-axis, is positive 1. So our coordinate for point B over here needs to be negative 1, positive 1. Please do not put a plus sign in front of your positive values. You just write a positive value as the number itself. You can then click submit and you'll see that you're on the right track. Okay. Now, I've spent more than enough time going through examples of finding coordinates with you guys, so I'm not going to waste your time and repeat myself, but I would recommend you try level one, and you can even move on to level two if you're feeling a little bit more confident. Here we start using decimal numbers, right? So, for example, if we look at point B over here, the blue dot, we can see that it's halfway between 2 and 3, right? Halfway between 2 and 3 would be 2.5. So you guys can go and try that if you want to, right? It's just an extra little bit of complexity that will help test your understanding of this work. It doesn't change the way that we find the coordinates. It just changes a little bit because we're trying to be even more specific, right? We're not always going to be lucky enough to have our points land on all of the grid lines. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit off of the lines. Okay, so guys, go ahead and please try this quiz on coordinate planes. And the second quiz is graph axes and quadrants. Again, start with level one. Question one asks us, in which quadrant is point N, right? N is the bright blue dot over here in quadrant number one. We can see that this is quadrant number one. Okay, if we refer to the notes that we wrote down earlier, it's going to take time to get used to this idea that we start at the top right-hand corner when naming our quadrants, but we would say that this is quadrant one. And you can see here that they sometimes use Roman numerals for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's no harm in practicing that either. Right. So you can go and then try this quiz and answer all of these questions about the quadrants of the um, coordinate plane. And guys, together, if you are able to complete both of these quizzes, it means that you really do have a very strong basic understanding of the coordinate plane, which I promise you is going to benefit you as you move into grade 8 next year. Okay. So, guys, that's going to be it for today. We've got about 3 minutes left. So, what I'm going to do is answer any questions if there's anything that you guys want to know. But we are officially done for today's session. I hope that there was something valuable for you to take away from the work that we covered today. If you haven't learned this in class yet, it's okay, guys. You will get started at some point. And if not, this year, you will absolutely be covering this in a lot of detail next year. Right. So, grade sevens, if you have any questions, please make sure that you ask me now quickly. Otherwise, guys, to wrap up, please remember that I know many of you are going to be writing your exams now in about 2 weeks' time, give or take. Okay. You have got access to so many great materials to help you revise, right? Beyond everything you learn at school and having a textbook, you also have iRainbow to help you practice if you are really struggling with a certain topic. And you have the recordings of all of these sessions that we have done as well. There should be close to 16 recordings already for grade 7 alone. Okay. Okay. So, guys, I hope that you will use those resources to your advantage. And lastly, guys, our next lesson is going to be next week again on Wednesday evening from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. But as per usual, I will put a message onto the group letting you guys know the exact times for next week's lesson. So I really appreciate you guys coming out to join this lesson and just learn a little bit more about this topic. I hope that it was worth your time. But guys, I will speak to you all again next week, Wednesday, from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening. I wish you the absolute best with any tests or exams that you have. If you have some before I speak to you again next week. But guys, I'll be around for 2 more minutes quickly if you have any questions to ask me. Otherwise, you guys are more than welcome to go. All right. Thank you so much, grade sixes. I hope you have a fantastic evening further, guys. Please remember to stay warm. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for attending grade sevens. I'll speak to you all next week again, hopefully. All right. All right, guys, I haven't seen questions. If anything pops up when you were doing your quiz practice or you have anything else in specific you'd like to go through before exams, please make sure you bring all of that information with you next week. Okay, ask me right at the beginning of the session and I'll do my best to help you guys out. All right, thanks, grade sixes, grade sevens. Sorry, I'll speak to you guys all again next week. All right, bye, guys.